Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Free Recovery at His Place Church.
Renew us in this day, just like you said you would. Your word is not in vain. Our hearts reaching heavenward. Fresh outpouring, tear the fabric open. Come, Jesus, come. Breath of heaven, nothing left unshaken. We long for more. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. As temporary fades, let glory invade the earth. Your power on display, our eyes looking heavenward. Fresh outpouring, tear the fabric open. Come, Jesus, come. Breath of heaven, nothing left unshaken. We long for more. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. There is fire stirring in our bones. A shout is rising, rising up inside. your treasures in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. I can see you now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to You guys know this, so if you're sitting at home, sing it out with me. Worthy is the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Sing a new song to Him who sits on heaven's mercy seat. We're gonna sing that again. Worthy is the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Sing a new song to Him who sits on heaven's mercy seat. clothed in rainbows of living color, flashes of lightning, rolls of thunder, blessing and honor, strength and glory and power be to you, the only wise King. Yeah. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. I will adore you, Jesus. Filled with wonder, awestruck wonder at the mention of your name. Sing that again, filled with wonder. I'm filled with wonder, awestruck wonder at the mention of your name. 'Cause Jesus, your name is power, breath of living water, such a marvelous mystery. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. And you are my everything, and I will adore you. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Holy, holy is He.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome a member of our church and a hardcore member of the Alcoholics Anonymous community, Whitaker.
Hey everybody, my name is Whitaker and I am an alcoholic. It is really an honor and a privilege to be here. It's also kind of emotional actually. I'm doing to current events, things like COVID, I haven't actually been physically in here. I've been electronically here, but not physically. And it's incredibly powerful to be here. Hard not to cry even actually. I wanted to talk tonight about fear and faith, both of which have a lot to do with recovery and the lack of it, depending which end of the stick you're on. First of all, like I said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm also an addict. I'm also a codependent. I'm an incest survivor. I'm a bunch of things. And the child of an alcoholic. And all of that formed a lot of how I looked at the world and why I ended up taking up drugs and alcohol as a way of dealing with the world. I was basically the child of two alcoholics, fairly successful people is the way the world judges that. My dad was a career Army officer and then a sales manager. My mom was a nurse. But They were both kids of alcoholics and alcoholics themselves. So we grew up dealing with stuff through willpower and all the ways we deal with stuff, and through alcohol and medicating things and whatnot. Dad was a closeted gay guy. Mom was from the country, didn't know that was what going on with Dad. So their marriage kind of was, he got married basically because he needed a beard. He needed somebody to have a wife to be as successful in the military, and all that came out sideways with us. Mom's drinking got really bad early, and we ended up having, like Dad ended up doing the grocery shopping and working and cleaning the house, and Mom tended to be mostly out of it. And when she got drunk, that's when things happened between me and her. I came out of all that. I also, from an early age, started doing stuff like entertaining at Dad's parties because he'd pull me in since Mom wasn't so good at that either. So I learned from an early age to talk to adults about politics and religion and stuff I had no idea what I was talking about. So I learned how to bullshit pretty much from an early age as well. And I came out of all that pretty much an angry, depressed person. My mask was always to be friendly and to be chatty, and I learned to do that really well. But inside, I felt this big hole inside me, this angry emptiness, and as far as faith went, we were Episcopalians. That's what I grew up with, high church Episcopalians. People think Catholics have incense every week. They don't. We did, literally. And we chanted in King James English, and God. I always thought of God as being an austere, Oxford-educated Englishman with an accent that disapproved of me, because we wouldn't, the gospel, like here at this church, the gospel's read in regular English, and we talk about it and we apply it. And the church I grew up in, it was chanted, and you do incense over the book and then chant it, I remember at the age of 12, there's a church, we had a big cross with a resurrected Jesus on it, and I said to him, you don't like me, and I certainly don't like you. And I'm never going to live up to what you want. I'm not able to do that, so let's just call this what it is, a joke, and let's cut our relationship. And that's kind of where I thought about it at age 12. I had a lot of, as far as the alcoholism goes, people talk about their first drink. My first drink was at 4. It wasn't like I got drunk at 4, but alcohol was a big part of our life, And then when my cousins came from Princeton, and in the 60s, everybody would drink like a case or two of beer, and we'd talk about intellectual stuff like, pacifism and Gandhi and all the crap we talk about in the 60s. And I was able to get drunk officially then, and then later on, I ended my professional alcoholism career at 15. But the spiritual emptiness inside is an important part of the story, because sometimes you'll hear in the rooms people talk about, well, I had this great life and then I drank and it went down the tubes. Drinking was my way of surviving what I already thought of as a crappy life, and an empty, painful place, the ghetto of my own mind. And yet I didn't grow up in bad neighborhoods. I didn't live in a ghetto. But if you're an alcoholic or an addict, you already are in a ghetto of your own head. And that's what takes you out, and that's what keeps you drinking. And if you don't deal with that, it will take you out. It's not a self-help program, AA. It's a God-help program. But you have to do stuff for God to help you, and you have to have some kind of God. And I'm here in a church, so I'll put it right out there. My life really changed big time, even in sobriety, when I had Jesus in my life. Backing up a little bit. So that was my background. I learned to be intellectually precocious. I had nerdy hobbies like history and religious studies and stuff, so I sounded pretty smart. How smart I really am, I don't know. I think if you have those kind of hobbies, you sound smart, even if you're not. College educated, because everybody in my family was going to go to college, and that's what I did. But it was all felt like a big lie. I always felt outside whatever group I was in. And I used to think I was truly an outsider, but in sobriety, I've looked back on that, and I think sometimes it's not so much I was an outsider, but wherever I was, I felt like an outsider. No matter what you said to me, it didn't come through inside me. Moments like granted, I did have a tough time in junior high. I got made fun of a lot and hit a lot, and I fought a bunch. Then in high school, I became a stoner where I was high, I think my entire sophomore and junior year. And in senior year, I became more of an alcoholic. But like, even though I had people that liked me in the stoner community, I never felt part of that. And I would never, and I remember a girl that liked me that I liked a lot, but I couldn't let her in. It couldn't get through that filter of I'm different than you and you don't like me, you know? In college, I hung out with a group of people you'd think I'd be perfect for. I was with history majors, and the alcoholism quotient in history majors was high in the 70s. We were all hearty drinkers, man. And yet, so I'm with cynical, dysfunctional people that drink a lot and like history. It should be made in heaven for me, but I still didn't feel the connection. It was years later in sobriety when I was wrestling with liking sports teams. And I thought, well, I can't root for this team because I'm not really from there, and I can't root from this team because I'm not really from here. And I realized nobody cares. The sports teams are happy if I just buy their gear and watch the game. They don't care if I've ever been in the city, you know. But it was my filter in my head that did all that stuff. So basically, I've been sober 35 years. I got sober my date of sobriety is February 15th, 1985. I got sober in New York City. My drinking career was basically, there was some colorful moments in it. There was some nice escapades, which make good copy, but it can be summed up by depressed, lonely drinking and putting myself in dangerous situations, you know. I think I took a personality test 6 months before I got sober, and it said I was 5 times as likely to die by suicide or homicide. Because, you know, when you drink and talk too much in a place like New York City, you can get the homicide part, and if you're brooding and depressed all the time, there's where the suicide thing comes in. I did have one suicide attempt when I was in high school. It didn't come to very much, but that shows you where I was at. I remember I'd hear stories in early recovery, and people would tell these colorful stories, and I thought my real bottom was listening to The Love Boat, wishing I had somebody that cared about me while drunk, you know. But anyway, so I was in New York City. I was going to seminary for the Episcopal Church. I dropped out of that to move in with the wife of a priest who was divorcing, and then she kicked me out for being crazy, and I ended up meeting a guy from church, Episcopal. I was still hanging in with the Episcopal Church at that point, even though my belief system was out the window. I didn't believe in Jesus. I was angry. I didn't really believe the Bible, but I needed something, and that's what I knew, so I kept hanging in there, hoping some way, somehow, something could change this thing inside me. And anyway, basically, this guy wanted to pick up on me, but I wasn't into that, so we didn't go there, but we became friends, and it turned out he was a sober alcoholic, so he kept talking about AA. And eventually, he convinced me that I was an alcoholic, although I had no intentions of doing anything about it. And eventually, I was at one low point, and I actually did go to a meeting. I'd been to a meeting the first time in 1979 because a girlfriend wanted me to go. And that didn't stick, but it planted a seed. And then I tried it once in the middle of, just after leaving seminary, I tried it because my life was really turning into a toadstool quickly. And I was in a strange city, and I couldn't get sober then. I remember that, I just couldn't stop. I wanted it, but I couldn't give that up. Finally, the last time, I was at a place where it wasn't desperate anymore, but I was getting high I was 28, and I was getting high with some 18-year-olds, and dime bags they used to sell back in New York City of marijuana. And I could have smoked a whole dime bag and been fine, but they were all toasted and acting silly. And I thought, that's fine for them. They're 18. I've been doing this 10 solid years, or since I was 15, and my life's going nowhere. You know, maybe if I stop this, there's a chance for something else to happen than that. And so I thought about that guy that was prattling about AA, and I called him up, and then I went to a meeting. And I was willing to actually, the one thing I really liked about AA back then was that I had friends. You know, there's people to talk to. I could go places, man. We could have coffee and all that. And there was some guide for life, because people would throw stuff at me about faith, and I never understood it, you know, like, what is turning your life over to God? What does that actually even mean? I've done a lot of religious traveling. I'm not going into great detail on all the different things I've joined or done, but I've joined a bunch of things looking for God in different places. I might make a sidebar on that right now to let you know that Jesus was like shit on my shoes. I did have one fundamental Bible experience at 14. I went for a brief period of time to an evangelical Christian youth group called Young Life. They used to have meetings in campuses. And I went on a retreat once and turned my will over to Jesus Christ. And the weird thing about that is that not long after that, I got heavily into drugs and alcohol. And for a lot of years, I did my best to not believe in Jesus. I didn't want to believe in Jesus, but he would sneak up on me constantly. It would be like, I used to say to myself, I'll believe anything you want during the day, but at night it always comes back to sweet baby Jesus, because when I'm scared and upset, that's what I'd end up praying to, I didn't want to. I got involved in the historical Jesus stuff and a liberal arts education in college to try to prove he wasn't the Son of God, but no matter how hard I tried, I'd end up believing in him despite my best efforts. And I look back on it and I think, God, when he claims you, he just does. I don't understand why he chooses the people he chooses, why on earth he'd have an interest in me. But for whatever reasons, it seems like he did. It just seemed like he did. He wouldn't let go. It's almost like an addiction. I couldn't stop the Jesus thing despite my best freaking efforts, man. And I studied. I was a religious studies major. I went to 2 years of seminary. I'm bright. I've read Buddhism. I've done the Upanishads. Man, I've given it my all, but to no avail, because God talks to your heart, right? Anyway, so, but the thing about it is that left me kind of confused too, because I have depression issues and anger issues and all that stuff. So when you tell me from that one thing, the one thing I did was not so healthy about that one experience was I got the idea that if you feel all full of stuff, then Jesus loves you. And if you're not feeling full of stuff, then Jesus doesn't. And if you're depressed a lot, or you're sad, or you're going through traumas, it doesn't work like that, And I learned later that's what's called immature Christianity. It's not about feeling. God always loves you and is always with you and walks with you in the middle of your pain. And some days you're just going to feel pain. And you're going to feel fear. But it's what you do with that. And God will be there with you in oneness with it, But I didn't know that at the time. AA was great for me that way, because it said, how do you have a spiritual experience? What does it say? It was made a decision, this third step, to turn your will and your life over to the power greater than yourself. Then, what does that mean? You do the rest of the steps. Okay, now I do my fourth step. And then I tell somebody else, because if I'm just telling me, I'll lie. I won't know. What I found with fourth and fifth steps, for those of you that don't know, that's a complete and fearless moral inventory, followed by telling to another person and God. The reason that happens is because the magic in that is somebody, when you look at it on paper and tell it to somebody else, you get to see stuff you don't see when you tell it to yourself. And stuff I did feel terrible about, some of it I shouldn't have. The other stuff, I should have, and I didn't, right? Numb spots, like stealing. I didn't feel much about stealing. I was okay with stealing. I felt bad that you didn't like me, but I could take your wallet and be okay with that. Anyway, so AA paved the way for me to have a faith experience, and it gave me a solid way to do spiritual life and not to drink. It gave me a community of people that got that life basically blew, and that for no good reason you want to torch it, and that helped me out. But I don't know how much time I have. I might be running out of it. I should have paid more attention. But try to make all the main points before I get hauled off the stage. The thing is that it does make a difference what God you've got, though. That's my experience. I did get sober. I did do the steps. Through the steps, I managed to have what I never had before, a career. I got into social work, and I managed to have a wife, and I had a house, but I was still inside filled with fear and anger, because the God I had was weak and intellectual. And it was basically my ego projected on the cosmos. It wasn't the God that tells me, dude, I love you, but I don't think that. And you're going to have to change the way you think, because I don't think that way. My ways and your ways are not the same. Love you, but this is the way it is. And I'll help you, but I ain't going to change for you. We are different beings. And I didn't want that. I didn't want it to be Jesus of all things, man. And so I struggle with that. And my marriage almost imploded in sobriety, and I was verbally abusive in sobriety. Roger is here, and Roger had known me for 20 years. It doesn't say much for Roger's character that he liked me back in the day when I was like that, but he did. We used to relate to each other. But about 5 years ago, my wife and I almost got in a fist fight. It was a little more than that, about 6 years ago, we almost got in a fist fight. And we didn't. And that was the one moment when my life was about to really implode, when I said, okay, I turn it over to you. I turn it over to you, whatever that means, if it means divorce, if it means whatever it means. And what God did was, he actually resurrected our marriage, and we ended up becoming a tighter bond. Now we both are Christians, and we both got baptized, and we're both here, and we have sponsees, and we do the 12 steps, and that wasn't where we were at. But Jesus made a big difference. That's the main point. Jesus, as a higher power, with the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, with a community of faith, with practicing these principles in all my affairs. But this time I had a God with the power and the glory and the might. So there was real force behind this stuff, and my life has changed. This is crazy times we're in. If you're not triggered and tripped out by the current events now, you're probably on some kind of tranquilizer, because it's upsetting. But I'm not torching my life. And every day I talk to friends and pray and work with people, and I get over it and remember again, who is my king? And what program do I have? AA talks about, are you of service? What have you done today? Reach out to others. We cannot afford the luxury of a single resentment. And that means even righteous resentments, the ones that's the hard ones, folks. It's not the ones that are lame brain that you came up with. It's the ones which you have real reason to resent them for. But that will kill you off even more. And God calls us to let go of even those. So thanks for letting me share.
Is this on? Yeah, there we go. Come here, brother. So, thank you, Whitaker. Thanks for the people who are listening to Friday Night Recovery at His Place Church in Westminster, California. And, I've known Whitaker for almost 24 years. And we met in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when we met, we both were, I would say we were pretty screwed up. And something attracted me to Whitaker when he shared in meetings at AA. And what attracted me was his creepiness. And the fact that the things that he spoke about, I related to. So I want to encourage the people out there. It's like, pick up the phone, because you can't go to meetings right now. Pick up the phone and talk to somebody and relate to them. Tell them how you're feeling and what you're thinking. And maybe everybody will get a good laugh. The power of prayer in the big book, it talks about that. Pray about everything and worry about nothing. The 12 steps will change your life, change your spirit, change your heart. It'll change everything in your world if you do them with somebody who's done them. And right now you can do that, meeting social distance and so forth. You can meet in parks, you can do it on the phone, but it will change your life, just like Whitaker testified to, just like he reported exactly what happened to him as a result of that. And my story is the same. And if you're not having a good day today, or you're in fear, then reach out for faith, do the 12 steps, it will change your world. Thank you for listening tonight, and we'll see you again. We're here every Friday night. We have AA meetings, we have NA meetings, and Whitaker even runs Al-Anon. So recovery is recovery, and getting together in a community of like-minded people who are lost or broken or dealing with addiction is the way to get well. So God bless you guys, and thank you for being here tonight.